introduction, obviously, there's a lot of burden of expectations on your shoulders as well. People expected, you've been the caretaker Minister for Energy for the last almost 2 months now, and you're making all the right statements at all the forums, be it media and forums like these, in terms of energy sector reforms, price rationalization, deregulation, etc. But the general impression is that the actual progress has been a bit slow. Moreover, we know all the problems, we know the solutions as well. They've been discussed for a long time, but it's the execution and the implementation part which actually gets somewhere lost in Islamabad. So how do you respond to those observations? Do you think that's really a fair criticism?
I don't think it's a fair criticism because I think we have to keep two things in mind. Firstly, when we came, in the very first or second week, we had to face agitation on the electricity bills. Now, every firefighting issue requires time. So for like 2 weeks, we were having meetings, we had to continuously report, come up with strategies, go on the media, pacify people. And while that was happening, we saw increase in petrol prices. And while we were handling that, after 2 weeks, we saw increase in petrol prices again. So right after taking over, the first 4 weeks were very, very difficult. Luckily, now the dollar is coming down against rupee, and that's helping. Globally, oil prices have also started coming down now. Secondly, I think people, the implementation arms in the government there are lots of implementation arms, and they're very, very big in size. And they have been living with a certain mindset over a number of years. There is a belief that this is the way things can run, and this is the only way things can run. So a lot of people, it's not like 1 or 2 people, you're talking about 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people within each ministry's umbrella who believe that, जी कुछ नहीं हो सकता, ऐसे ही चलेगा, ऐसे ही, और कोई तरीका ही नहीं है. Now, in order to change those minds, in order to come up with ideas and convince them, it requires time. Because you need people to execute any idea. And because we are a caretaker government, so people know that we'll be there for a few months, we'll talk big stuff, we'll be gone. So there are lots of mental shifts that we need to do. Now, among all of that, we are trying to push through. We're trying to do things. So we have taken 7 months, and I think this could have been 7 weeks, sorry. We have taken 7 weeks to really get going with things. This could have been probably 5 if we would not have faced the initial agitation. But I think I'm happy that we are on the right track. Let's look at what has happened. 7 weeks is, people get settled in 7 weeks in a new job. This is the cabinet we are talking about. Now, what have we achieved in 7 weeks? When in the country have we seen this sort of massive crackdown? Okay, we lose 589 billion, we have recovered 17 billion. That's 3%. I know that. But then, it is not just 3%. It is a change of the way people are living in this country. It's change of a norm. Gas theft, smuggling, Afghan transit trade, currency trading. Now, some of the work is done by the ministry, but a lot of work is done on these fronts by the law enforcement agencies. But the ministry is also involved because all the entities, the discos and all, we have to push them. At the same time, the work that we have to do, say on the power sector, the circulated stock, like today I'm in a position to say that beginning November we will have a plan. We have already finalized the gas prices, and last week every day I was thinking it will happen today. Finally, today we have circulated the summary to the ministries. And I know, and I'm very happy that we took time, because last night, this morning, we were constantly playing with the numbers. So that's one big job done. We're talking about finishing the circulated flow in the gas sector. So I think we have achieved a bit on the energy. One can argue more could have been achieved, but I'm happy with the way things are, to be honest.
Okay, thank you very much for that. You talked about that in your speech as well, about the issue of cross subsidies. I was just looking at the data put out by NEPRA about the projected sales for 2024. Out of the total 110 billion units of sales that they're projecting in that year by discos, more than 50% is going to be to the domestic or residential sector. And out of that 50%, half is going to be in the category which consumes 200 or less units, where the average rate is less than 14 rupees if you work out the weighted average rate, whereas the national average for the sector to break even is just under 30 rupees. So it's just a massive cross-subsidy element in the low consumption brackets, which has to be, funded either directly by the government or by cross-subsidies by other sectors. So do you think that, that burden of cross-subsidies is actually impairing or impacting the productivity or the competitiveness of other sectors, especially the industrial sector? And is there any plan in the works where do you plan to revisit the entire tariff structure and the way these cross-subsidies have been morphed over the last 20 odd years or so?
Yeah, I agree that this needs to be revisited. What has happened is people have refused in the past to look at the protected category. They just have refused to look at it. जी ये protected category है, उसको देखना ही नहीं है because of political reasons. But what that has led to is massive cross subsidies. I think we are cross subsidizing the domestic sector to the tune of 700 billion rupees or something, 680 billion rupees, which is huge. So we need to do that. We need to rationalize the tariff structure in a way that the burden will be less on the poorer classes and will be high on the rich classes, but that the disparity has to be fair and a bit balanced. But just to share with you, when we were looking at the gas prices, the same issue was existing in the gas prices also. And we talked about and the first thought was we can't touch the protected category. Now that's 60% of the people. So I agree that we should not put burden on them, but we are giving gas in the houses at monthly bill of 200 rupees, 150 rupees, 250 rupees. This is the price of gas in the urban centers people are paying. Now, the same income level of people in the rural areas are buying LPG. They might be using other means, biomass and all, but if they buy LPG, they pay much higher price. So it has to be fair. So what we have done is on the gas, we have made sure that on the lower categories, the impact is less than 500 rupees. अब 500 रुपए का burden या 400 रुपए का burden लोग बर्दाश्त कर सकते हैं. So we have done that in the gas. So there's a precedent now, and hopefully that will be approved, inshallah. So we will do a similar exercise of tariff rationalization in the power sector also. And I agree with what you were saying. Okay. We need to do that.
Okay, thank you. Globally, energy transition is something which is already in the works, progressing at a very rapid pace. That's something which is going to happen in Pakistan as well, whether we plan it or we just let it happen in a chaotic way. So do you think that there's any thinking happening at any level within the government that we have to transition towards electrification of mobility, of other consumption of various energy forms, and using alternate means and domestic resources to fund that energy consumption, whereby the power sector emerges as a main, final form of energy. And as people say it now globally as well, that electricity is going to be the new oil because everything is going to be funded by electricity, and electricity is going to come from, renewable resources. So is there any coherent thinking happening at the government, at Planning Commission, or your ministry, at Ministry of Energy, or other regulators?
No, it's not happening. and it should happen. It's not happening because we have parked various responsibilities in silos. We have got, for example, within the power division, we are responsible for renewable. So we talk about renewable, but the thinking on renewable is hydel, wind, solar. The thinking is not really electrifying these things through renewable or through whatever means of molecule. Then we have NICA, which is responsible for energy efficiency and conservation and all. Then there's climate change. Then there's petroleum division. So it's all scattered. This will require to be brought under, it'll come within the energy sector. Now NICA was transferred to Ministry of Science and Technology for a few years. Now it has come back to us. So there is no structured or coherent thinking. It's not happening. And maybe at some stage, Pakistan will need an energy directorate or something like that, where this whole responsibility of energy transition comes under one umbrella. But at the moment, that's not the, it's not being tackled at the moment.
Okay. The introduction of CTBCM doesn't benefit the masses, as it benefits consumers above 1 megawatt consumption only. So what's your comment on that?
That's true. It's a phase-wise approach because government is the single buyer. We have a single buyer model. And if the single buyer, day one, if CTBCM is implemented across all consumers, it will not be practical. So in phase one, 15% of the consumers, which is more than 1 megawatt, will be going into CTBCM. And then other consumers will take a while. The roadmap for complete implementation of CTBCM is quite long. It's like 4 or 5 years. I don't agree with that. I think it should be shorter. But in order to make it shorter, we will need to do some changes on how we are buying energy, how government comes out of it, how we issue supply licenses, the wheeling charges and all of that. But I think the way to go is, in the first phase, we should only do the bulk consumers. There's no other choice but to go in phase-wise.
Okay. Another question, what are the roadblocks in setting up new LNG terminals, especially allocating pipeline capacity? So why are we waiting for only Russia to set up the North-South pipeline?
Sorry, the last part?
Why are we waiting for only Russia to set up North-South pipeline? That's part of the question which came up. So you can probably start with answering the initial part, which is what are the issues which are holding up setting up new LNG terminals? Is that the allocation of pipeline capacity?
We have the pipeline capacity to cater to one terminal. What happened in the previous government, 2 terminals were auctioned, Energas and Tabir by Mitsubishi. But only one terminal can come at the existing pipeline capacity. There's no roadblock in that. We have already engaged with these terminals, and I think one of them will come through. So,
okay,
yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
And Park Stream, the Russian pipeline, it is not the only option, but it is an option which is on the table, which is in advanced stages because of the Russia-Ukraine war and all the sanctions that has stopped. But that can be a good project for Pakistan, because initially it was on build, operate, transfer model on a certain tariff, then the structure was changed. But I think if we can go back to a tariff-based structure, it might be a good option for the country, because we don't have the dollars to put in right now. So it may not be a bad option.
Okay. You talked about that in your speech earlier. What's your view on privatization of electricity transmission, especially part of the supply chain, and also the distribution sector as well? Do you think that within your limited caretaker setup stint, you can actually have some sort of a plan in place which can be then set in motion and not reversed by the subsequent governments, whereby this privatization of the transmission and distribution networks actually takes place?
Transmission, though, we will not touch. It has to come after probably discourse. So we can pick one of the 3 battles at this stage, and I think discourse is the battle we want to pick. Transmission will follow later. There is a conversation about listing NTDC on the stock market because it's a profitable entity. So that's what Finance Ministry and SECP will look after. We don't mind if it is listed. But on the privatization front, we will not look at NTDC. We just can't at this stage. Our focus is discourse. I think in 3 months, we can put a certain framework. We can do the regulatory changes, most of them, and have a roadmap for that. But in 3 months, it is just not possible to get a disco out of government's hands. We have seen global examples. It generally takes minimum 6 to 8 months to consummate the entire transaction. But